in another video, I don't know if you saw this when we talked about the Hegelian dialectic. How many of you have heard of the Hegelian dialectic? Problem, reaction, solution, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Very much on point in terms of describing this process. And Hegel penned this or coined this term. Just briefly, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So you start with this first proposition, which is the thesis, and then you have the opposing, the opposition, which is the antithesis, and then somehow through that struggle, through that tension between the two, you come to a higher truth, a so-called higher truth, which is the synthesis. That's basically the outline of it. And that synthesis comes about. And just for example, in society, and I have to obviously be very careful the way I word this, but you've got man, God made man, then he made Eve, the opposite, male, female. And then in society, you see that not only between what we've been talking about in society, left and right, the ethnos and all of those kind of tensions, you also see the tension that have you noticed that they're saying, well, all men are toxic? Have you noticed that? Have you seen that? Masculinity is toxic. You get this, and feminism and all that, you get all this kind of tension between the two. And ultimately, the solution that's provided is merging as a higher truth. Do you see that? Do you see that happening? The solution to that tension is to merge as a higher truth. That's the Hegelian dialectic. That's what's happening. That's what's happening. And all of these things, all of these agendas are playing through society, ripping through the fabric of society, destroying family, destroying society, causing massive polarization in so many ways and at so many levels. And then you're presented with the solution. You see, they present you with that solution. They say, well, this is the solution to that tension, to merge as a higher truth. And this is what we're heading towards, folks. This next picture is a little bit disturbing, but it's just from an album cover. It's available in any store, so I feel like I can show it. Is Marilyn Manson. This is an album of Marilyn Manson. This is an album cover. And you see there he is embodying the Hegelian dialect, the Hegelian dialectic. The one that I just showed you, the graph that I just showed you, that is the quote unquote so-called higher truth of them merged together. So if you saw the full album cover, you would see that he's basically embodying that merger. I'm sorry to have to show it, but it just gives you a prime example. And the same with Prince. Prince did the same, but Marilyn Manson does the same. And you notice that his name, his artist name, is Marilyn Manson. So you got on the left, feminine, on the right, masculine. That's what he is embodying. And also, you've got Marilyn, which is, he's named after Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was seen as this beauty queen, etc. And then on the right, he's called Manson, which is named after Charles Manson, who is seen as one of the most evil. So you see, he's got the two pillars, the polarization, the good and evil, the male, female, all you see merged into one. This is what he's showing, and obviously he is a occultist. So this is what they're showing. I mean, they all believe this stuff, right? Luciferians and whatever. And so the synthesis is some kind of new agey idea of rising above to a so-called higher truth, basically breaking away from what the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob created, and then merging and breaking free from that. Remember the Gnostics that we talked about before? They believed that Adam and Eve were kept prisoner in the Garden of Eden, and therefore Lucifer broke them out of that prison. So you can see that kind of idea that it's all about breaking free from the so-called prison or shackles that our true creator has created us as. That's what's going on. It's all an affront. It's an affront to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's an affront to what you read in the Bible. It's all about that. It's about rebellion. It's about inversion. It's about all of those things. And that's what the Luciferian principles are about. That's basically a quick summary of some of that. But this is what we see. And as we've talked about before, the Jesuit order, I see a lot of attachments to them in some of the things that are going on. There always seems to be a link to many of them. And what do you see in critical theory, which is very similar to liberation theology? Those are some of the words associated to critical theory. And a lot of this is taught in the universities now. Cultural Marxism. I mean, you want to see what the agenda is that's being pushed. You just look at the universities, just look at what they're teaching in the universities. And yes, there are a lot of universities that are basically owned or run by Jesuits in some capacity. But the critical theory is just huge now in the wokeism, in the far left stuff. And we talked a bit about it in the video, but patriarchy, that goes with the toxic masculinity and breaking out of that traditional structure, the patriarchy, oppression, social justice, cultural supremacy. How many do you see saying stuff like Western colonialism is the most evil thing in the world? That's the Western colonialism is the root of all evil in the world. You just see that, cultural supremacy stuff, but they won't talk about other forms of colonialism. These things are just really, really being pushed. Yeah, and it just makes me think about how Jesus talks about things being in the end times and how the stoking the division and nation against nation and just all of these different things, folks. It just won't end well, will it? It won't end well.